There are people who study trafficking, people who prosecute it, people who write reports about it, and people who debate policy from conference rooms. There are people like me. I've never been trafficked. And then there are survivors. Terry Forliti has lived the reality that too many people discuss only in the abstract. She survived exploitation, addiction, homelessness, and turned that experience into decades of frontline advocacy for victims of prostitution and sex trafficking. She has led survivor services, worked with anti-trafficking organizations, advising policymakers, and has become a powerful voice for a principle that should be impossible to dispute. If you want to understand exploitation, we must listen to those who have survived it. So today on Lynn's Warriors, we're talking about survival, accountability, buyers, traffickers, vulnerable people, you name it, what justice actually looks like from boots on the ground. And this conversation may be disturbing to you, but I think Terry will agree with me that it is the reality in America today. And that's what we're going to talk about. So I want to say, let's just start with welcome, Terry, to the Warriors.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm honored to be here.
You know, Terry, this is your story to tell. I'm not going to pretend. Of course, I've done my research. I know you from our coalition calls, and you're such a passionate warrior. Where would you like to start? What do you want to tell us about Terry?
Well, I came from a middle-class family in, it was pretty well-to-do family. My father was a doctor. My grandfather was an artist. I say this because trafficking does affect a lot of different communities. The primary communities are Black and brown and folks with addiction and a lot of vulnerabilities. My vulnerability was created when I was 15 and I was raped by my boss at work. Back then, I didn't really understand that I was raped. My parents, I didn't want to tell them I wasn't a virgin anymore. They were going through a divorce. It was real tough. So from then I went through drugs and lots of things and ended up having a lot of sexual exploitation occur before I ended up being trafficked. So often in our communities, traffickers look for those vulnerabilities, right, Lynn? They look for folks that have addiction, maybe have higher ACE scores, things like that. And so with the addiction, the playing field was right for me to get into trafficking. And that's what happened. But there was a lot of other, life events that happened along the line. And I want to say this is because we don't always recognize what's happening. I didn't even know I was trafficked until I was in an organization called Breaking Free that was run by Benita Carter. I'd been there for a year. And it wasn't until I understood the dynamics of the power and control wheel that, yes, it was the lover boy strategy. My boyfriend did. I thought I was in love with him and he had to do this and had to do that to get by. And it was only going to be a one-time deal. And pretty soon you're caught up in the life. You've got felonies. Your family doesn't want you anymore. Maybe you've lost your children. You've certainly lost your job and you've lost your mind because you're high all the time and you're not sleeping. So it's the perfect trajectory to get somebody into an abusive relationship. So that's kind of how I got into life. I was on the streets. I wasn't crazy about turning tricks back then. I would try to do anything I could to not do that. So I would steal high item things, jewelry, Ishimiyaki cologne, Gucci glasses, things like that were high value that I could trade instead of trading sex. But things get caught up, and when you're in the life, it just seems to be a vicious circle. And it wasn't until I'd been in the life for several years on the street, had been to 12 treatment programs, that I got pregnant. And I was 42 years old at this time, and I decided that I needed to keep this child because I'd lost my first two children to their ex-husband. I wasn't able to care for them. And this child, her daddy was my pimp. And I knew that she wouldn't have anybody if I wasn't there for her. So I did ended up going to Breaking Free. I met Miss Benita Carter.
Yes.
I was there. And throughout the year, we went through this curriculum, this curriculum that laid out exploitation. And I thought, but wow, a lot of these dots, I connect with. But I never wore high heel shoes. I never wore a little dress. I never posted anything on Backpage. So I am not a prostitute, but golly, a lot of these other chip boxes. And then after a while, I looked at Joy Friedman, who you've met before. I said, Joy, you know what? I think I was prostituted. She goes, oh, well, welcome to the understanding, because this isn't something that you want to acknowledge. This is something that you want to say, but this is what happens. And that's why so many of us go untreated. We can't find our community. We don't understand what happened. How could I have been so stupid
to
allow this man to talk me into do all this stuff? How could I have allowed my addiction? So what I do today is try to help make those connections with other folks in the community. I was so old when I had my daughter, Hallie. She's only 24 now. So she's got a whole lot of friends in that 20-ish category that I can mentor right now. I can break some stuff down for them because they start to understand and they start to realize some of that behavior. And since her daddy and I were both in the life, you can imagine our friends that we still have today, and relatives, just as a byproduct of being in that life, although they're not practicing any of that kind of behavior anymore. And we're still always connected,
Of course, through that. I mean, Terry, first of all, I want to say thank you to you for sharing all that, because I hear the same thing all the time. I didn't even know I was trafficked. I didn't realize I was a prostitute. And I don't like when you said, how could I be so stupid? It's not being stupid. It's being young, and it's being caught in that vicious cycle where you just want to survive, right? And so how are you getting out of that cycle? You're just trying to, have a meal or trying to get through the day. Or I'm glad you bring up about, prostitution. It's important people realize they understand, because Terry, here in New York City, I constantly hear, well, it's their choice. They don't understand. We want the public to understand there's coercion, trauma, exploitation. That is prostitution. I know you agree with me on this. Just give us a little more on that, because I'm tired of hearing, I'd run away. Oh, I'd kick my trafficker. Oh, I'd never get involved in that. If you're a young person and you show up at the Port Authority bus terminal down the street from me, because I've seen it, kids with backpacks, okay, and you're hungry after 2 hours, and some guy or woman, we have a lot of women involved now, says, oh, you look like, are you lost? Are you hungry? And a naive kid will say, sure. Oh, let me bring you for a hamburger. There. So people don't understand how simple this happens to people.
Well, and let me break something down for you. Something that I truly believe, and I'm going to hear some arguments about this, but we've heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs for years, right? Food, clothing, shelter. I am going to challenge that. As a person that grew up on the streets, it's food. We definitely need food. Clothing's easy. We can steal it, trade it in, whatever. But we need connection. Mm-hmm. It's food, clothing, shelter, and connection. Mm-hmm. And and I'm going to get back to that question in a minute, but there are, in every city, you're going to see a number of folks outside that don't ever want to go inside. Paranoid schizophrenia, lots of different things. I wouldn't go inside when I was on the streets. I was afraid, because you go into a house, there's somebody at the front door with a gun, someone in the back door, usually in a trap house, and whatever happens in between, you got to do it, Lynn. You get through that door, over that doorstep, and now you're the victim, or you have to do whatever unless you have a gun. But I was a felon, so I never carried a gun. So that's why a lot of folks are outside, but they're looking for a connection. So when you meet that person at the bus stop and they want to have, yeah, you're hungry, but you also, someone just recognized you. Someone just talked to you, Lynn. Nobody talked to me. I'm a freak. I was raped. I had all this stuff going on. So my self-esteem is so low. And maybe I need, back then I was doing cocaine. I need a line or I hit a crack. And it ended up being crack because the crack is so much more expensive than cocaine. So then I had to make way more money every day. So yeah, it's this cycle, but you don't realize you're getting caught in. Like I said before, I didn't ever place a back page ad. That's what prostitutes did. I didn't wear high heels and go up and down Times Square in the 70s. That wasn't me. I didn't dance. I can't dance. I'm not a stripper. So I'm not a prostitute. I'm not good enough to be one. Really. I'm not that pretty. I'm not that smooth. I don't have any game. I'm not that. I'm just, don't tell anyone, Lynn, but, every couple of days I do hop in the car with someone. I need that crack or I need that cocaine. So yeah, I'll have sex sometimes, but it's not, and a lot of times what it was, I was so naive. A lot of times what it is that your pimp will set stuff up for you before stuff happens. And it was called the Memphis hustle, because a lot of my pimps and my pimp and co-pimps were from Memphis, Tennessee. So it would be the same thing. It would be, you find the white girl that is a little naive, and has low self-esteem, and and for sure she's not addicted yet. And there's a lot of courting, a lot of, compliments. You get her home. We go back to her apartment with a bunch of folks, and someone gets her in the bathroom, gives her first hit of crack while she's inhaling. They have sex with her while she's still having that hit, because you freeze. And now it's a done deal. She'll probably not go to work the next day. It'll take about 30 days for her to lose her apartment because her job's gone, because that's where we're going to post up. I started seeing these patterns, and because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand what was happening, because sometimes there were girls that would come in and they'd get their assignments from my pimp. And it wasn't like that for me. So I never thought that I was, in the life. But when you trade sex for something, that's prostitution. And it shouldn't be that. And then, and just the whole power and control, you go out. Because I remember when early on, I wasn't used to the whole pimp thing. We were at a bar, and I told 4 or 5 pimps to go out, bend over, come back, and give me the money. I got beat up that night. I had 12 ribs that were broken. And not 12. I had 6 that were broken, and I couldn't go in for a week because I was so beat up. And then, I was on a morphine drip for 6 hours a week later. But yeah, no, it was just learning and adapting, and then closing your wheels, your opportunities for escape. So let me tell you another story. Another one of my friends, as soon as she met her pimp, it was the same kind of a thing. It was, the lover boy strategy. She was in New York, actually. There were so many women from Minnesota that went to New York. There's a Minnesota Street, it's called, the Minnesota Connection. It's 42nd Street. And they were there. And after a couple months, he says, I just lost a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
I lost the money gambling last night. Jenny, you got to help me. These guys are going to kill me. I need this money, honey. She's like, oh, God, I don't know what to do. What are we going to do? Well, there's one way out. There's one way out. If I hate to do this, but you know how we're together every night. If you have sex, because she was 14, you have sex with this guy, the debt will be off and we won't have to do anything again. And I swear it'll be 10 minutes. And if you cry, if something's too awful or aggressive or something, call my name. I'll come right in there and grab you. Well, that's what happened. I knew the two guys that turned her out later. And no, she was in the room for probably 2 minutes before she started screaming. And nobody went in there to rescue her. And then when it was all done, now she's a hoe. You did that for them. You can do that for anyone. So that was a real, true breaking out story. And that's how a lot of this stuff happens. And, but you don't always want to admit, that's what you're doing. So, yeah. I mean, it's a lot of coercion, trickery. But again, Lynn, it's not just food, clothing, shelter. It's a sense of belonging.
Connection.
You have to know that you belong. So many of us have been abandoned by our parents, husbands, other folks in our lives.
Terry, we don't talk about that enough.
Right?
You know how,
right?
well, we at the Warriors do a lot of child work, like child digital safety, and it's always about parents are the first line of defense and step up parents. And I'm always like, yes, of course. But there are a lot of kids that don't have parents, or they're in foster homes and
that part.
Now, this is the part, Terry, where they stare at me. Again, I'm like, I'm worried about all the kids also that don't have any parents looking for them or who are out on the streets. Like, who's watching them? Of course, I never get any answers. We don't know about that. But you're right about this connection. This is something I think we need to talk about much, much more and open that up.
Oh, absolutely. And aging out of foster care is another thing, Lynn, near and dear to my heart. Yes. Now, when I was at Breaking Free, because we were one of the only gigs in town back in the early 2010s, we would see up to 1,300 people a year.
Wow.
Now, that's a lot. And of those people, I didn't get to know all of them, but I certainly did intakes and there was touches with all of them here and there. And then I was the data girl. So of the people that came to Breaking Free, 95% of them that were in foster care were abused. 95%. Yeah. In fact, when you break the numbers down, I think there was only 2 out of the 10 years that I was there that weren't.
95 might as well be 100. You know what I'm saying?
Might as well be 100.
Yeah.
Because we don't always.
Yeah, we don't.
Girl. And we don't always know the abuse either. So,
right.
You've heard of fawn or fight, fright, freeze, and fawn, right? So sometimes when we're in that PTSD, when there's some strange things going on, you shut out. Just roofies things. I remember things that were so odd that happened that I think that couldn't have really been true. Because you dissociate, you have to protect yourself, right? You push things out. And so trying to make sense of it all is really disturbing. And very often we need some sort of community intervention in order to get out.
Yeah.
Mine was my kids and then my daughter. And then I breastfed her till she was 3 because I didn't want to relapse, Lynn. I knew that I wouldn't use if I was breastfeeding. So I, implemented these practices, stayed away from her dad, all this stuff. And then he did get out of prison. And and then I relapsed for 2 years. And I was going to lose her. And the only way I could get her back is if I went to inpatient treatment for 1 year. And I had a couple charges. And I did. And that's the last time I ever used. So praise God that did work. But it took a lot of different treatments. And treatment's good. It's really good, but it doesn't work if you're not ready.
Right. Yes.
But it taught me so much that I can reach back on now. Because when I first started using cocaine, I thought, you are such a freak. What is wrong with you? Well, what's wrong with me is that I'm using it because it's doing exactly what it's supposed to. So when you realize what the components are and why it makes you want to use it again, now all of a sudden I realize, I'm being duped. That's the addiction force of it, right? I'm not a freak. So as long as I don't pick it up, I don't have to use it. Easier said than done. But when you're forced to, when you're in lockup situation for a year, you're not using anything. So this is a great way to start fresh. And that's what happened to me. I did a lot of jail time. I never did prison. But like I said today, Lynn, I had 4 felonies. I still have 1. I had 3 expunged. And I ran an organization that had a $2.3 million a year budget. But I can't even work for DoorDash today. Make that make sense. So we got a lot of work to do.
We have a lot of work to do. It's very painful, all of this, you know, talking about foster care but my mind's wandering right now, but let me stick here. All right. So you talked about, you did jail time. Let's talk about right now, Terry, you're in Minnesota, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about a little bit the landscape there and what you're fighting there right now as we transition. You know, we talked about the coercion and connection and all this, and what's happening there makes no sense to me and many others. What is going on in your home state right now?
It's actually appalling. So one of the things Minneapolis has been very proud of is that we are home to a lot of gay men per capita outside of San Francisco, and have done a good job with making some spaces available. But the Minneapolis City Council, the governor and Fry have introduced bathhouses as they're couching it as an LGBTQ safe issue. As you know, Lynn, a bathhouse is nothing more than a brothel. Yes. It's just like a hotel. For those of you that have not been to a bathhouse, you rent the space just the same as you do a room. So each one of those spaces are private, and it's a place to have legal sex. So the mayor, the city council, a couple years ago they're trying to make Minneapolis a sex sanctuary city. So we can have a big ditty party and lots of different venues to create that situation. So we had Safe Harbor. Many of us worked really hard to create Safe Harbor back in 2010, 2012, 2014 when it was implemented. That was protection for our youth. So what we're doing right now is we're taking away all of those protections by introducing this bathhouse. So the city council came up with a blueprint, which is basically, for all intents and purposes, their mission statement. So they're laying it out, Lynn, for us. They took out the term sex survivor and sex victim and replaced it with sex traitor. So we're aligning that with that this is empowering, that there's nobody that's suffering from this. I'm not a victim, I'm a sex traitor.
Right.
So the creating the language and the platform to, most of our leaders claim that they are supporting decrim, but the language actually allows for legal sex in the bathhouses. So that's where we're at now. So the city council passed it without most of the community understanding what was going on. And then within 5 days, the mayor signed it into.
Terry, okay, a couple of questions. Seriously. First of all, this will promote, and you'll get into it, sex tourism, right?
Yes.
No accountability.
Yeah.
We got to get into this demand. I mean, that's fundamental. We don't talk enough about demand and that accountability, creating this sex market, right? I'm going to ask you the big question, and I don't mean to sound dumb. Like, why would they do this? Is it because there's money, so much money involved, because they can? Who wants to harm other people or promote to our young people in particular, like this is a lifestyle or a way to be safe? When I know, many know it is not. Why would they do this?
Good question.
I don't know either.
I don't know either. But this is what I do know. If we want to create a safe environment Why don't we take a look at the things, a safe human trafficking environment, a safe exploitative environment for our boys and girls? Why don't we take a look at some of the things that work? Why don't we do this? Why don't we interview those that safely exited, boys and girls that are not under pimp control, and tell us what they want? And let me give you a little clue on what some of those answers might be. Housing, food, medical. And again, we're not using this and our other private parts for office space. And there is no, there's an imbalance in the sex trade. We know that. A system that favors buyers, victims that face criminalization, and all kinds of disparity on the races and the folks that are used in these facilities. Again, so one of the folks in town here in Minneapolis that runs a gay establishment, and he's a good friend of mine. He said, Terry, we really do want to protect the boys, but this is my thing. Why would you how are you protecting a boy by bringing him into an environment where there's legal sex? Because you rent those spaces out. Now, one of my friends, when she first started, I'll give you an example, in King County, when there's bathhouses have been there for a while. Bathhouse, sauna, whatever name you call it, it's the same thing. So she would be in there for 6 hours a day. And her pimp would send the tricks in every hour. So there was no money exchanged, right? And so that's how the bathhouses get away with it. There's no prostitution because there's no money exchanged. Don't be dumb. So not only did she sit in the same water, no condoms, same water, wasn't exchanged, and the pimps, they just sent, it was easy peasy. Easy peasy. And I had other workers, other friends that worked the brothels back then, that they said their quota went up because there were straight men that went to the brothels that were interested in fantasies, and would call them later. So some of the call girls appreciated getting more business back then. There was I don't understand why anyone would want to say that it's okay to have sex.
You know what, Terry, I've come to the conclusion that because they can, that's a bad answer. Like this power thing, because they can. Who in their right mind? I don't want to be the morality police, and I'm not, or anything like that. But who would allow, especially our young people, and you and I know the demand is for younger and younger, okay? Who would want this for our young people instead of spending all this energy and time and city councils? Why aren't they, like you said, working on housing, working on program, where they can go for medical, where they can go for job training or something like that? Why aren't the efforts, I'll never understand this, put into that as opposed to this? But Terry, I want you to weigh in about this, about the buyers. It seems like they always get a slap on the wrist. Nothing ever happens to them. And if you open up, these bathhouses, it's very simple. It just means more trafficking, more exploitation. It doesn't mean anything's better for anybody. Weigh in on the buyers, because I keep saying in New York, I don't understand. Nothing ever happens to them, yet you'll put a 15-year-old girl in jail or something like that, and it's not her fault, kind of thing. So tell us a little bit about the justice system.
Exactly. So the system of prostitution is designed to spotlight the availability of sex provided by women and girls on the margins of society, while the buyers are being masked, right? They demand this availability. They crave anonymity in order to compartmentalize an abusive practice and segregate it from their reputations, their careers, and their families. Well, there's no national repository of data on men who purchase sex acts. We do have snapshots from around the country and different folks that ran John's schools that identify the attitudes of those who purchase sex. I was one of those, Lynn. I was able to run a John School, to help facilitate a John School for many years. And I was able to communicate with some of the buyers from a perspective of, rather than shaming, of having conversations of what was going through your head when you first purchased sex. Were you at a stag party? Was someone was a virgin and they wanted to practice on someone? Many thought that this was mutual, that they were helping somebody out, that they wanted it, because quite frankly, we have to look like we want this. Otherwise, we're not going to turn any tricks. I would love to say, hurry up, get this over with, but that's not in reality the way it is. So just understanding the buyer's attitudes. And it's anyone that purchases another human being for anything, in my mind, is a sociopath.
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
So what? Yeah.
It's
So
disgusting.
yeah, and by legalizing it in communities like well, for instance, in Germany and other places where they legalize sex, we've seen what happens there. There is way more demand than supply. So those of us that work in those hotels, they're basically apartment buildings, high rises with hundreds and hundreds of folks that never even get out. It's way more tricks and way more dangerous. So yeah,
And way more trafficking, Terry, right? They bring them in.
They're not
German. They're not like German women and girls or boys and men. They're bringing them in from Africa, all these other countries.
Half of them are from the country. The other half are from Eastern Europe and Africa still. That I was able to be in the French Parliament in April and spoke with folks from Spain and 26 other European countries. And most of the trafficking in Europe, half of it is from the country where they reside in, and the other half is a combination of EU and Africa. So we know that's going on. But glad you brought that up, because I'm not just an abolitionist here in Minnesota. I'm an abolitionist internationally. Yes. And we work to protect kiddos and girls and boys all over the world. And what's happening in Minnesota is just absurd. And I don't understand why, the Freedom, George Soros, the Freedom Fund, so often our community leaders are drinking the Kool-Aid and taking, building their curriculum and things from the Freedom Network. I'll give you an example. One of our biggest community organizations that feeds the homeless in the state of Minnesota is called Catholic Charities. Many cities have a Catholic Charities. Well, unfortunately, it was just defunded. But prior to a month ago, they fed almost everybody and housed more people in Minnesota than in all other organizations combined. Well, one of my ex-employees got a job there. And she calls me, she goes, Terry, I'm doing some training for our shelter folks right now, and I'm really confused. I'm not comfortable with the information that I'm supposed to be giving. I said, baby, what? She goes, well, we're supposed to tell our clients, and it's in a PowerPoint, that it's cool to do sex work because you don't need a high school diploma or any higher education. It's flexible hours, and it can help you afford gender affirming care. I said, well, sweetie, rip it up. And then no, don't communicate that, and we'll get back. So yeah, so that's the kind of stuff we had to fight. I had to call, even though the Catholic Charities has nothing to do with the Catholic Church, really. I did call some of the folks from there, and then I did get to meet with the Catholic Charities leaders, and they did take that down. But if we don't have people looking at that, Lynn, and recognizing it for what it is, it's going to be the new norm. And that's what they're teaching in college, that this is empowering. It's harm reduction.
Teaching it in middle and high school, Terry.
Yeah, in high school.
It's the messaging is starting way younger now.
Way younger.
We used to
but
say
nothing
college.
is new under the sun, Lynn. Abuse is abuse. Abuse is abuse. And it's not okay. Anyway, Well,
I mean,
yeah, I guess
look at it's a whole nother program. You know, we learned a lot since that COVID period, right? And just this
hmm
push online and OnlyFans, and you know, that's billed as empowerment. And I've got very smart here in New York. Sorry, I'll say they're very smart young women who go to Ivy League here in New York. And I want to say about a year ago, they started telling me, oh, they do these foot pictures like online. I'm like, what? Getting all these graduate degrees coming from what would deem good families, okay? I'm like, well, what are you talking about? And I'll just leave it at that. And they're like, well, nobody can see my face. And I'm like, do you know how degrading though that is? That yeah, but it's better than working at CVS.
right.
You're like,
No,
wow, if this is
girl,
normalization and habituation to all of this, you know?
Miss Lynn, I'm so glad you brought that up. So that's another coercion method that some of these privileged people use who say this is empowering, right? Maybe you are only using your feet because a lot of people have feet fetish, believe it or not, a lot. It's really weird. So some of my friends would get paid $500 while a guy did something in her shoe, and that's all it was. So that was easy money. But again, how degrading, and why do we have to do that kind of stuff? But that's what I'm talking about. You start hearing that, you know, but what happens when you have to meet that person in person? You know, and by the way, I don't know if everyone got the memo or not, but our body parts aren't plastic. They do wear out.
Yeah.
You know, they do wear out. So when you're doing 5 to 10 tricks a day, you know, let's say 52 weeks a year, you take off 10 because you're in jail. That's still a lot of tricks, right? That's a lot. And you can imagine what happens with your body. And it does. So it's just absurd, the arguments that I hear about how empowering the sex trade is.
And especially, I'm going to say to you, coming from a lot of women, I know how empowering, because I digress here, Terry, for a second, but I was in a councilman's, New York City councilman's office about a year ago, talking about equality model, and especially in the Queens area, Roosevelt Avenue here, overrun, open 24 hours a day. Like nobody was stopping anything. Okay. And he had the nerve, I will not name names. Okay. I already said Queens, you know, people can figure it out if they want. And after I'm explaining and giving facts and the fact sheet and all that, he looks at me, Terry, somebody who's been around a long time, and says, but men get lonely. After I had a survivor with me who also has had so many multiple surgeries over the years on her back, on her everything. Okay. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit. People never really talk about the toll it takes, not only on the brain, right? This is trauma for the rest of your life, and your body as well. And I'm sure you probably know more. I know survivors who just get to a point where their body gives out and they die. They just can't go on in their 40s or 50 years old, you know?
Lynn, I had a friend last week. Her name is Michelle Adams. We're having a memorial for her on Wednesday. That's exactly what happened to her. I had another friend 3 weeks ago who died in a house explosion. The gas, and that's my second friend who died in a house explosion. Do you know anyone who died in a house explosion? Most people don't, and this is crazy.
Very suspicious.
Very, well, yes, but it's also just the lack of housing. You know, we're staying in places not meant for human habitation. Getting out of the life, it's very hard. You have an emotional, a psychological, a physical effects, obviously, with everything. And one of the things that Benita Carter, Marian Hatcher, and Audrey Morrissey and I did a panel at Shared Hope International a couple months, years ago, called OG Speak Out, Older Gals Speak Out. But we are all gangsters too. We've been through some things. I talked about how from the top of my head, I have to put on this lotion or I get this horrible, horrible anxiety stuff, scabs on my head. I take out my hearing aids, my contact lenses, my teeth. I'm a stage 4 breast cancer survivor. So I still have issues. I can't feel part of my body because I had 20 lymph nodes taken out. I just had 5 hernias removed, you know, along with a whole bunch of other pelvic floor stuff we won't get into, to a artificial knee. And I'm working on physical therapy so I don't have to have my hips removed, to whole feet. My feet are so bad. My ankles and bones have cracked, and there's things that can't be repaired. So physically, yeah, I'm a hot mess, but I'm really lucky that I'm here. Emotionally, yeah, that's been tough too, because see, some of those very vulnerabilities, Lynn, that we had that got us into the life we weren't aware of. I didn't know that I was ADHD until 2 years ago. Everyone that's met me says, you know, what are you talking about? You've always been that way. Well, I've been hyper, but I thought that was because of the cocaine. And by the time I got into the life, we weren't talking about ADHD back then. But since I've been on the correct meds and I've been able to focus, my life has completely changed. In the last couple of years, it's easier to focus. It's easier to accomplish a task. And I'm much happier, and I'm getting the right sleep, the right amount of food. Everything is working. I didn't know I had that deficit.
But they didn't have that, Terry, when we were like little kids or teenagers.
Didn't.
There was nothing like, I'm 65. They had nothing like that.
I'm 65 too. So yeah, nothing like that. So I didn't know, right? So there was all kinds of things, and who cares, right? ADHD is a dime a dozen diagnosis, but I'll tell you why it matters to me. I can communicate and get things done that I couldn't do before.
Yeah.
And would that have made a difference in my life years ago? Had I known, or had I, you know,
maybe.
been able to? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. But by then, so many of us were touched as little kids and raped and things. So our trajectories, we start getting messed up real early. We get confusion. The very folks that are supposed to protect us didn't. Why? And what does that mean? Who does that make me? You know? And then it starts from there, and then it just compounds, you know?
Yeah, snowballs.
Oh man, I'm going to go to a keg in high school just after I got raped by my boss. I'm not going to tell anyone, but get drunker than a skunk. First time I drank, I blacked out, you know, but I go back home, stumble in the house. There's no dad there. He left my mom with 5 kids. She's insane at this point. She's going to the local shopping center in her pajamas and nightgown because she's going through trauma. And then it's compound with all 5 of us kids. And then, you know, you're vulnerable. People see that, and holy moly. And I'm a person of privilege. Most of my friends out there were Black and brown. A lot of them were Indigenous, and all of the Indigenous ladies I was on the street with are dead. And that stinks.
And we don't talk about that enough at all, Terry.
No, we don't. We don't.
But I want to share something with you, Terry, that was very disheartening. I tried a couple of years ago to get much more involved with a group, Indigenous. I went to a meeting here in New York. However I can help, spread the word, participate, march with you. And they basically said to me, you don't know from us, like you're white and blonde. I said, I am, but I'm passionate and here to help in any way. And that could even be bringing my Goya food into a community. You know what I mean? Or my little domestic violence group. I'm not a doctor or psychologist, where women can just talk to each other, okay, and share things. And they really just didn't. So they didn't want any part of me. And usually I'm the type, I go back and get in your face constantly. But I decided, you know what? I'm got to go where I'm sort of want it. There's a lot going on here. So I've got to go where I can affect change. And one actually started yelling at me. And so I can't help I was born white and blonde with blue eyes, right? I'm here to help.
But I have an answer for you. Or I have a suggestion for you, not an answer. So I don't know if you know who Chris Stark is.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Stark is an author. She's one of my very good friends, and she's here in Minneapolis. So every year, May 1st,
she wrote the book about the
Carnival Lights,
and
dissociation, and several of them. So anyway, she's like, Tara, we're going to bring a bunch of women up to Duluth on the 1st of May every year, and we're going to have what's called May Day, like help. So we grouped up with some Native elders, Skip and Babette Sandman, and I would bring a whole bunch of people from the Catholic Church, the nuns, and then some of my folks, and many of us, and Chris is blonde, and she's Native. So we went up there. And for years we participated in the ceremony, and we just showed up. And then Babette asked me to speak at the first one. No, I was so scared. I was crying. I said, Babette, no, I can't. So I grabbed the microphone and I said, listen, I am so sorry. I first of all, I want to acknowledge that I am white. I am a female. I am, from the dominant culture that caused so much oppression, but I'm here to step beside you to help. And that's what I did. I was just real honest. But that might be the only thing I could do. So what I did right across the street so I continued that tradition. So I was accepted to some spaces. One Indigenous woman made me a skirt, one of those skirts, which was just beautiful. And so Minneapolis, Minnesota is home to 11 tribes. And so I did work with a lot of the organizations, but it was very reluctant because of, again, what I would do is across the street from us, we'd have Breaking Free, and right across the street was Anda Young. So what I would do is we had a fire pit in the back. We grew sage. The ladies would have their own garden pieces. They could have ceremony there, but when it was time to go to group, you going across the street. You're going to Anda Young. We'll handle the Black culture. They're going to handle the Native culture, right? So that's what we did. And then there were some other organizations. But yeah, the Native community, it's a different group. But so Mending the Sacred Hoop and the Garden of Truth were written by some of my friends as well. And they're wonderful documents. Chris Stark was part of that. Nicole Matthews runs Muzak. She's a really neat woman in town. But I don't get too close. But I do show up in the background. Mm-hmm. I'll show up in the background. And but yeah.
Yeah, it's something I've got to chip more away at, I guess.
Are you aware? Have you met Dr. Sandy Pierce?
No.
Okay, so Dr. Sandy Pierce is an Indigenous woman. She helped write the Garden of Truth, and she's in a town. It's not Seattle, but it's close to Seattle.
I'll find her. Maybe I can interview her.
Yeah, you would love her.
Yeah. I want to, because I always feel like that's a big lacking piece, that there's not enough.
It's a lacking piece, and I do respect people's boundaries and people's
but here's the thing, Terry, because I hear this a lot from actually my Black friends. Actually, I'm not trying to be the white woman coming in to save everybody. Like, I'm just trying to do a good job and help everybody. Because because once I do win for myself, like the trust, I'll say, when I started offering through Goya, a tremendous organization as far as food, like flatbed trucks if I want the food, as much as I want. I couldn't just go to what I call housing projects here in New York because they don't accept me. Even if I wear a ponytail and no makeup, I can't.
What?
So I would have to bring my Black friends with me to open the door. Now all the women, of course, a lot of grandmas run these housing projects. They got their own kind of police force going on there. But no, I took my Black friends would say, like, no, we got to go with you there to introduce you so they can trust you and get to know you and deliver the food. And I get it. You know what I mean?
I get it 100%.
I totally get it. And they also would say the same thing. No, we don't want some other white woman coming in to save us, because that's what I said. Yeah, but you don't know me enough. I'm just really trying to help everybody. But yeah. I just point that out because, there's a little pushback, but I get it. Like, I totally get it.
There is. But once they meet us, so at the end of the day, I'm a felon. I've been on the street. I got some thug thizzle. I can put on my corporate hat, but I can put on my street shoes too, girl. So we can either fight this out or we can share some stories and we can get to the bottom of it. And that's the bottom line. So today, at the end of the day, my folks come in every race.
Exactly.
every race.
I'm glad we're pointing this out. And don't dismiss me, Terry. I'm from New Jersey. We are tough cookies.
I already know you're badass.
Uh,
I can tell. Yeah, this probably
I'm just
transformed it.
I'm being well behaved here. Let's finish up with we have a lot of grandmothers that actually watch the Warriors and always want to help and have time on their hands, actually, which is why we're going to put in the body of this video. We'll have all of your information, much more information about you. We'll have a link, okay, to all of your information, the letter, whatever. But what do you want to tell moms and grandmas, parents in general today? Because
Yeah.
I do hear a lot. Okay, so we've got the internet, and that's opening up the world to everybody, including our kids especially. They always say the same thing, Terry, which drives me really nuts. My children would never do that. That would never happen to my daughter. You, as a survivor, as boots on the ground, and God bless you, because again, I can't do my job or spread awareness without sharing your voice and your journey. So I thank you for bravely and courageously joining me. And Terry promised me, like, we will talk more frequently about all these issues.
Let's talk.
Because, Terry, we throw around the word collaboration. And I used to think, I really went into this so naively, right? I thought everybody could get on board helping with all these issues and going to Capitol Hill by myself in the beginning. I had never gone in these hallways. I did it all by myself. And I thought, oh, they'll all just like me and they'll want to get on board. And then I learned, Terry, the politics of things or the
Right.
mean girls. I'm like, I think I left those mean girls in 5th grade. I don't know. Whatever. I don't care about them. It's
No,
about
they're back and they're staffers.
They're worse than ever. Okay. Is what I have to say. And I went to all girls Catholic school my entire life. And I thought some of those girls were bad. This is worse. But anyway, I can handle it at 65. But tell us, leave us with what gives you hope? What do you want to tell parents?
Yeah. The parents and the grandparents. You and I are both grandparents for the first time, and we both each have one grandchild, which is kind of unusual at 65, but I'm very happy.
I'm thrilled.
I'm thrilled too. But there's a lot we need to do. And I'm really happy about what France did last week. They banned social media for all kiddos under 15. And it's not practical for a lot of people to ban social media. There's a lot of things that you can do. And there's a lot of platforms you need to be looking out for. Don't give your infants phones. I'm appalled at the 2 and 3-year-olds that I sit,
they're on iPads. They're on iPads.
They're on iPads.
Every airplane I'm on, Terry, kids are on iPads.
It's insane. You are creating a vulnerability right there and a disconnect from reality. The other thing, I love Kendrick Lamar, and I love how he says, turn the TV off. There's nothing, let's try to avoid television and other people's Kool-Aid coming at you. Guard your ears, your eyes, and your mouth. That's what I would tell them. Guard it with the internet as much as possible. These games, Roblox, that's where you're going to meet folks. Be real. Talk to them about what this looks like.
Talk to your kids.
One of the things, Lynn, I used to do is I'd walk up and down the aisles in an auditorium, and I'd tell you who, I'd come off as I'm a pimp and I'm going to recruit someone right now. And I'll tell you who I'm going to recruit. And I would go up and down the aisles and I'd pick those out that were the most vulnerable. And I'll tell you who they were. The ones who looked down, the ones who wouldn't make eye contact. What do you think we're creating now? With all this social media, people are losing those skills to interact face to face and the trickery. So to me, let's talk about it. Grandmas, moms, Lynn and I will tell you some stories. We'll tell you about Johnny DeMay and what happened to his son. We'll tell you how all these other kids are getting sex exploited. We'll tell you the stories, and you start repeating them to everybody you know. So understanding is wisdom, right? And wisdom is power. But without that understanding, we don't have wisdom. So, Lynn, the more we can talk about these realities that we learn at that Nicosi call, and as we're walking up and down those halls, and by the way, you get your steps in, because those are a lot of halls to walk in D.C.
And it's tough in 4-inch high heels, which I wear on those hard marble floors. My feet take a week to recover, Terry. That's
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, but I like that. Look, it's pretty much common sense. I know that's thrown around a lot. We've learned, we have studies, right? The internet was born basically in 96. We've got 30 years. We have whistleblowers now that have worked at these big tech companies. We've got survivors. I like to say, I remember when I started this, somebody said, Lynn, you talk about too many things. You have to pick one topic and stay on it for every. I said, no, it's like a big wheel to me with a lot of spokes and they're all interconnected. I got to connect all of them. I mean, vulnerable kids lead to exploitation, lead to trafficking, all this stuff. So I think, Terry, as we finish up, it's really collaboration, communication, and there's so many resources. And we will have your letter. We want to keep talking about.
How about let's have these folks sign on to sunsetting HB 232.
Well, that's the next thing. Because all last year I'd say, unless we do something with this Section 230, I don't know how we're going to get anywhere. I think that is something, again, that we're not given enough attention to or forcefulness to. It's happening a little bit behind the scenes. We have a big vote coming up this Wednesday with the Commerce Committee for our Kids Online Safety Act, Senate Version 1748. But, all of this, including the prostitution, is done. It connects to big tech, all of these platforms where they're hiding behind the screens. There's so much to talk about, Terry. I want to thank you because your story, again, I've never had any of this happen to me. I feel very blessed and very lucky and that I can share your story, your work, your journey, because that is what matters the most. That survivors are at the table, survivors share what needs to be done, and survivors are given the resources, and we can take care of you, Terry, and everybody else. So let me just ask you one other question as we finish up. How do you take care of Terry? Because you're out there all the time. I know that you mentioned earlier you have some days where you're just told to be, you're quiet. Yeah. I'm very serious when I say, how do you take care of Terry? Because this is a lot.
Terry loves to paint.
Ooh, I like that.
My grandfather actually was Les Kuba. He helped do the Coca-Cola, the Greyhound.
Wow.
But I don't have that kind of talent. But I do like to paint. I like to garden. I like to cook.
Therapeutic.
I like to make jewelry. And you know what's fun about it? We used to teach
you made those earrings?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
We used to have classes for the girls. We'd for all of our clients. And what was fun about it, not only did it bring out their creativity, Lynn, but I could gift this to somebody when I don't have money and I'm in treatment. This is a beautiful gift I could give my mother and feel good about me, and she'd feel good about it. So the rewards were just, but yeah, no, I love, I'm a crafter. I love to read books that make me feel different. I have a whole library of survivor books. And then I got a library full of certain authors that I love. I like to walk and I love music. So
music is so uplifting, Terry. Music can change your whole mood if you put music on. Right?
And you get to choose what mood you have. We all get to choose it. We can create that mood, no matter how tough things are, no matter how despondent we feel or discouraged we feel. We can create that. That is within our power. We can shut certain things off on some days because this is really heavy material.
Yes.
You have to have thick skin. You have to be used to death. You have to be used to addiction and exploitation. And it doesn't mean that we're clay, that we don't have a heart. It means that we know how to process and lift each other up and how to move forward. And by never forgetting, there's certain things. There were so many women in my program that died that I created this infinity hug, and I did each name in calligraphy one after another to create a visual that helps me heal when I think of the hundreds of people, women that have died, and a couple men in prostitution in the last 10 years that I've been working, 20 years that I've been working in this field.
Wow. I mean, Terry, I think those are final words of empowerment to leave this. Again, promise me you'll come back. We have a lot to talk about. I want everybody to know that all of your information, I'll put it in the body of the video. We must confront in America, these are my words, all of this exploitation. It's 2026. Enough is enough. I'm going to be realistic, Terry. We're not going to stop human trafficking, right? We can intervene, we can educate, we can prevent, and that's exactly what we're doing. Any final words, Terry, you want to share before I have to let you go? Although I could talk to you for 6 hours before I
Me
have to let
too.
you go.
Thank you for your compassion. Thank you all for being interested. It matters.
Yes.
It matters. We hear you, we see you, and that's what gives us hope. And together we can make some changes. So thank you for this opportunity.
Terry Forliti, thank you very much. You are a tremendous warrior, and we will speak again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.